Hello, everybody, and welcome to Fireside Paranormal Podcast. My name is Jordan Cline. As always, I have a fun show planned out today. My guest today is Tim Marczenko. He is the author of Disembodied Voices, True Accounts of Hidden Beings. I'm really excited for you guys to hear this interview. Before we get to it, just a few announcements. Spooky season doesn't last just a month. Shop Wicked Cat clothing year-round to get your horror, paranormal, spooky, and Halloween apparel. Go to wickedcatclothing.com, shop apparel and accessories now, and save 30% with code Fireside30. Go check them out. Also, I'm a big supporter of American Paranormal Magazine. They have a thing going on. If you are a paranormal investigator and you want to get some recognition for your team, they're actually starting almost like a registry, like a database, as part of the magazine's website of different paranormal groups. So reach out to them and get your name on that list. There's also an event coming up later on this month. It is the Wonders Oddities Expo and the Tri-State Exotic Animal Expo. They're going to join forces for a huge 2-day event, March 26th and 27th at the West Virginia State Penitentiary in Moundsville. Admission is $10. Kids 12 and under are free, and tickets are available at the door. I love these events. They're a lot of fun. I like having a table set out where I can meet you guys. I have a lot of folks that come up to the table and share their stories. That's where we get a lot of our featured stories. I love doing it. I love sitting face-to-face with you guys and hearing your stories and talking with you all about it. So as long as they keep doing events, I'm going to be a part of them. So I hope to see you guys there. Our featured story this week is also going to include a game that they had designed. So take it away. Killers the Card Game.
Hello. How's it going? I'm Jeff Ignatowski from Cincinnati, Ohio. I have Killers the Card Game. Little paranormal story for you guys. We went up to Las Vegas to go to Zach Bagans' haunted museum up there and spent a lot of time there. Had an experience with Charles Manson while we were there. My dad actually met Manson in the early 60s. Before all the Sharon Tate murders and everything. However, I was telling that whole story there, and my wife turns away from the turns away from the case that has all the Manson stuff in it, and she felt two hands on her shoulders. And so it was kind of like to us, like Cousin Charlie was saying hello. So we also had some things follow us home. So for about 3 months, we had all kinds of poltergeist activity at the house. We had to get a clearing for the house. It was bananas around my place. So we got all of that stuff. We created a card game called Killers the Card Game. Lots and lots of fun. Kind of a cross between D&D and Magic the Gathering. So currently we're over 300 killers. When we fully release it, we'll have over 700. We got 4 expansions released. We got an Indiegogo up right now. And if you want to follow us and check out what we're doing, check out our Linktree. It's Linktree /KillersTCG. And you can find all of our stuff there. Check out our website, all our socials.
Very cool. Thank you so much. Killers the Card Game. Go look it up. Go support them. Really cool group of folks designing that. And a very interesting game. If you would like to be our featured story, make sure you email me your story at firesideparanormalpodcast@gmail.com. If you have a interesting game or experience or anything like that, if you have something you want to showcase, just let us know in there too, and we can put it on the air for you. All right, I want to get to my guest. Join me by the fire as we welcome Tim Marczenko. He is the author of Disembodied Voices. Tim, you with us?
I'm here. Thanks so much for having me on.
Tim, I've been excited for this. I know we had you scheduled, months ago. We just kept going back and forth with scheduling because, you're in Canada. I'm in, West Virginia in the U.S. And, sometimes things get a little tricky when we cross borders, right?
It happens, but I'm glad we finally got a date down.
Absolutely. Tell me about this book. I've been really excited about this.
Yeah, so it's called Disembodied Voices, True Accounts of Hidden Beings. And it kind of started because I had a very weird, very creepy experience when I was a young boy, probably about 12 years old.
Really?
Yeah, and I didn't know where to place it. It was this encounter with a disembodied voice, and there wasn't any material out there. So after a while, I kind of started like collecting little snippets of stories and things, and I thought, I'm going to put this together. I'm going to put this into a book and see kind of what comes out of it. And, that was, I don't know, maybe 2 decades ago. And now the book's out, and it turned out pretty well, I think.
Now, what can we get into some of those like things that had happened to you? What really brought this on? It obviously left an impact.
Yeah, my story was pretty creepy. I can go into the whole story if you want.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, okay. It's so I was about 12, like I said, and I grew up in the country, so our house was completely surrounded by forest. There was one road in, one road out, and I was pretty much just like a backwoods kid. I loved playing in the forest. And one night, I think it was about late summer, I was just playing basketball in the front driveway, and it was my own business, and there was no one else around, and the forest was eerily quiet, and then all of a sudden, I hear these 3 kind of digital beeps from the woods, and it was totally out of place. This was way before people carried cell phones. Okay, so this was completely out of place. There's not going to be any digital devices for, miles around. So it got my attention, and I kind of stepped towards it, kind of looking into the woods, and kind of wanted to like see what the heck that was. And all of a sudden, a voice came from the forest, and it called me by my name.
What?
Yeah. And not only that, it sounded like it was my father's voice.
No.
So, yeah, so it totally got my attention, but I knew it wasn't my father because my father he was there, but he was not in the area at that time. He was somewhere else, and I knew where he was. So, I wasn't scared, but I was instantly curious about what the heck was going on. So this thing called me by name, and it said, probably the creepiest part was it said, "Come into the woods. I found something." Now, before I go any further, you got to understand that it's not just a regular voice. The way it was talking, it was kind of like I always described it as a very limited, pre-recorded speech.
Did it sound almost like a recording, like kind of digital?
Not like it wasn't.
The reason I asked, I've heard reports of that before, like some voices coming at you out in the woods that almost have like a digital feel to it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's hard to describe. Like it's not like a robotic kind of voice, but it is like a digital, mechanical kind of weird. It's like stilted. It's like very like stoppy, starty. It's very like the tone of it is off. Like it doesn't sound human, but it sounds like the pauses are unnatural and everything like that. So it's very like I said, it's like it sounds like it's pre-recorded. So when I responded to this thing, I wanted to find out what it was or what was going on. It only could respond in the exact same way, in the exact same phrase. So it would just say, "Come into the woods, I found something." And there was about maybe,
You're giving me chills.
Say it again, sorry?
I said you're giving me chills.
Yeah. I had to live through this thing, so it was kind of like there was only like 8 or 10 like phrases that it had. And it was that's what kind of got my attention because I was like, this is not a person. You know what I mean? Like this is not a kidnapper or this is not a prank from like a neighbor or like a friend, and it's definitely not my dad. So, I just kind of stood there and I was like, why don't you come here? And again, it would do this phrase again. Come into the woods, I found something. And immediately I thought of the digital beeping, and as kind of like a way to convince me, the beeping started again. You know what I mean? And it was kind of like completing this like curiosity cycle with me. And you got to remember, I'm a young boy, and I'm not thinking about, I don't really know, the dangers of the world completely. I'm probably like 12 or whatever.
I was about to say, how old were you? Like 12?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like you weren't even thinking, wow, that sounds like a digital manifest of a voice there.
Yeah. I was just kind of like, it piqued my interest. And like, I was always like, the weird kid. I like weird stories and, spooky stuff and unsolved mysteries. And I read all that stuff. So I was like, whoa, this is something unique happening right now. So I didn't run away. So anyway, I had this conversation with the dark, if you can call it that, because, it wasn't really much of a conversation. It was pretty one-sided. So anyway, this thing just tried to keep coaxing me to go, and I did not go, obviously. And I just ignored it. I heard 3 more beeps, and then the voices stopped completely. And then I saw my father, I don't know, a few minutes later, maybe 10 minutes later or something. And I asked him, just to make sure, I said, hey, what was it that you found in the woods? And he looked at me like I had 2 heads. Like, he was like, what do you mean? And I was like, well, you were calling me in the woods. Like, what was it? And he was like, no, I wasn't calling you. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. And that's when I got the chills. And he just walked right past me. And
like nothing to him.
Yeah, it was no big deal to him. And at that point, I, turned around and looked at the woods, and I was like, something almost happened, and I'm glad I had my wits about me that night.
So were you like walking in the woods at this time, or you were just out kind of by it?
No, I was. It was the forest is kind of like at the end of my driveway.
Okay.
So I was probably like 15 feet from the tree line.
Man.
Yeah. No, I didn't like. So that's the other thing is like I'm very, very familiar with that property of woods. We used to play in there, build forts and everything, and hike and everything. So I knew the trails and everything. So like I'm not worried about walking in there in the dark, but I didn't go in that night. I was like, I'm just going to stay here and kind of see what's going on. I'm not going to go towards this thing. So
now, do you like looking back into, your adulthood now, you've been doing research for this book. Now, did you have any other experiences with this, or was this like a one-time deal?
You mean the voice specifically, or paranormal stuff?
Well, that kind of voice, like out in the woods, or I mean, anywhere.
Okay, so yes and no. So I haven't heard anything directly similar to that, but when I was in my probably early 20s, I moved away from my forested, nice little town. I moved to the city, and I was living at my girlfriend's house, and I was toying with the idea of starting this book. So it was a very early process, just kind of brainstorming. And we were just chilling in the basement watching TV, and I did hear another voice. Keep in mind, these are all external voices I'm hearing with my ears, not with my head.
Okay.
And I heard it in the corner of the room, and it was kind of like the same kind of taunt. So, I mean, if you read the book, there's kind of a progression, a story, and kind of like an arc to it. So it's kind of like a conclusion, if you will, to like the previous encounter. I mean, there's no way to prove that, but I thought it was kind of related somehow.
Mm-hmm. Was it like the voice of your dad that you heard?
No, it wasn't the voice of my dad. It was a different voice, and it was kind of like a taunting voice kind of thing. I don't know how to describe it. It wasn't the same. It was kind of like a more of a demonic type of thing. I guess you could say more like a guttural thing.
Was it like trying to like call you to an area as well?
Well, it was like originating from the dark corner of the darker corner of the basement, the far corner.
Nope.
So of course, and so No, it was. I forget what it said. It's in the book. It's something like, I'm going to get you, or something, terrifying like that. But
Just the usual terrifying thing that it could tell me.
yeah. Well, that's what I mean though. It was kind of like a taunt, kind of like it was just saying something to get at me, because I don't know, like maybe it knew that I was going to research this book, and maybe it knew that I was going to kind of dig into this. And I really did dig into it. Like, it was years of research and stuff. And I mean, if you read the book, like how, deep that history goes and how rich that folklore really is. And it is really kind of interesting.
Now, with your research and what you've found, like what kind of things did you come up with? What was it that you believe that these voices were? Is the same thing that was out in the woods? Because to me, that sounds like almost Wendigo-ish, with that calling out in the woods, especially with the weird speech patterns, and the more demonic feel that you felt in the house.
Right. So there's a book like this, when you're covering voices, you kind of have to cover the whole spectrum, and I didn't want to leave anything out, but I also didn't want to spend too much time in certain areas. Because when people pick up a book like this, they have an expectation, or you know what I mean? So there was so many takeaways and a lot of things I learned from this experience. One of the things I'll just touch on right away that you mentioned is like the forest. So most of these external voices come from forested areas, places that are not densely populated. It can be on your back porch or whatever if you're living in the country, or it can be on a hiking trip, you know what I mean, or a camping trip, whatever. So if you go back through history, a lot of those voices also occur in wilderness areas. You want to look at the Bible, a lot of those prophets, back then, all there was wilderness. So, to encounter these spiritual beings or, supernatural entities, it was a lot more common if they, in fact, originate from wilderness areas. So, yeah, I did find a parallel there.
So you really did dig into every part of the almost paranormal. It sounds like you're playing around with like fae and, nature spirits kind of feel.
Yeah, definitely fae related. And as you jump around to different countries, different cultures, I learned that they're pretty much describing the same voice in the woods, just with a different name. And some people say Wendigo. Sure, if you go to India, it's not Wendigo. If you go to the Philippines, they have 5 or 10 different names for it, or 5 or 10 different beings that have similar attributes. And that's the stuff that I really wanted to kind of like bring a credibility to it.
Very fascinating.
Because it was tough to hand the reader like physical evidence in that sense. You know what I mean? So I'm kind of backing this new phenomenon that hasn't been touched on before. I'm kind of trying to back it up with historical evidence and folklore from around the world, really. And like I said, there's some really interesting parallels.
Yeah, I think it's really neat that there's different places in the world that are having like different, like the same phenomena in different ways, calling it different things. I think I had an author, Ron Murphy, on before talking about like mermaids. Like every different like corner of the earth has their own story and history of mermaids, but like there's cave paintings and everything of these drawings. It kind of shows up different times when there wasn't like a communication barrier between them. And it sounds like it's a very similar deal with what you're dealing with here. It's the same kind of experience, but throughout history, there was no connection from one country to the next on what it could possibly be. Yeah,
and you're exactly right about the mermaids, because you look at, the siren song, it's kind of like that lure to danger, or that lure away from safety, or that lure to isolation. And, every culture has that siren or that mermaid. You know, there's some Norwegian folklore, the Nok, or Sweden, the neck, and you know, I dipped into like Native American beliefs about their water spirits.
Mm.
You know, these beings that inhabit lakes and rivers.
So you dug into like
you know,
mermaid stuff as well.
yeah. Well, you know,
Oh,
because
I was like off the cuff
anything,
with that. Like I didn't know that was in there.
well, anything that has like a voice connected to it, right? If a voice is involved in that folklore, it's relevant to this, because you have to understand that these things are probably going to change their strategy based on their location, their target, and probably like the century that they're operating in. You know what I mean? Because
Well, let me ask you this, because you're getting into that kind of deep question. Would you say it's almost like the same, for lack of a better word, I'll say creature, that was luring you maybe into the forest that would have been luring sailors out to sea?
It's tough to give a confident yes, but I would say that you know, if it's not directly like a siren, for example, it's definitely something that is ancient. It's definitely something that's been around the world. You know, I don't know if they're all, you know, factions of one thing, or you know what I mean, or like it changes and evolves. Like it's tough to give a confident yes. I'm leaning towards a yes, but like I said, we still have a lot to learn with, you know, a topic like this.
Now, with this book, did you have other kind of experiences drawn in there that weren't your own? Did people send you their stories of hearing voices as well?
Yeah. So one of the things I wanted to do was kind of mesh together some more modern experiences with mine, and then blend in with the historical stuff. Because, like I said, when someone tells you a really out there story, it's kind of like it kind of comes and goes, and maybe you don't put too much stock into it. But if someone says, "Hey, that's not unlike this story that, you know, these group of people believe in this, you know, part of the jungle," or, you know, I also have this story, it kind of stays with you a little bit longer. At least it does with me. So I would reach out to people who were willing to chat about their encounters with disembodied voices, and some people were happy to chat, and I would interview them a couple times, and there's a good collection of stories in the book.
Now, would you say that like these encounters were similar? Like, did they have like a running theme with it?
Yeah, I'd say they're definitely similar. And one thing that I came up with when I was doing research was a kind of 3-tiered formula that I wanted to touch on. It's because I noticed a pattern in pretty much every story. And the 3 tiers that these kind of voices go through when they, you know, approach, you know, a human or whatever, is I call it the lure, the trap, and the lost.
Ooh.
Now, pretty much every story has a lure and a trap. The lost is different, but I'll break down them all. So the lure is basically getting someone's attention. So for me, when I was playing basketball, it'd be, you know, saying my name. So that's a lure. You know, you have someone stop what they're doing, you have their attention. So the trap is what I call is like the call to action. So the trap could be something like, "Hey, come here, I found something," or it could be, "Hey, help me." You know, you have a lot of stories of people hearing voices calling for help.
Yeah.
So that would be the trap, because basically at that stage, it's asking for you to kind of make an action towards it. So it's kind of developing. So that's the call to action. And then the lost, I felt the natural progression would be what happens when you follow this voice. What would happen to me if I followed that voice?
If you went out into the forest.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't be heard from again. And, you know, I don't know of anyone who's followed a voice into the woods and come back to tell about it. So that was my natural progression with this 3-tiered formula, and I noticed that pretty much all these stories have this formula applied to them, and it works. So I added that in, and it can be taken literally or it can be taken figuratively. So if you have, for example, a prophet or whatever, they could be lost as in they're kind of overcome with like a spiritual quest or something. You know what I mean? Like Joan of Arc, for example. Like she was kind of lost to those like powers that were bigger than her, you know? So
I'm kind of thinking, and I don't know. Let me interrupt you just a second. You know, when you're talking about this, like especially like just playing off of your first experience about going into the woods, you know, think of all the missing people that we have in like the national parks, right? Hundreds of people a year go missing. Now, what if they heard a voice and they followed?
It's really the perfect opportunity because, like, if someone hears the voice of someone they trust, they are going to follow it. Like, the chances of them going after it are much higher than, you know, than not knowing who it is, or a call for help. You know, these are the perfect ways to kind of mislead someone or to get them to a place where they become vulnerable. So, yeah, I totally agree with you. There are way more missing people than we should have, and there's something to it.
Yeah, I wonder if there's some kind of connection with that. You might be onto something, sir.
And we would never know, you know, because there's no evidence. There'd be no way to prove if they heard something unless they come back and tell us, you know, I followed this voice. So some of the folklore is in different countries that if you do follow the voice, it will lead you into pitfalls or, you know, lakes or other hazards. Or if you want to go to, like, you know, the kind of like evil entity route, it leads you in to kill you or devour you, whatever it wants. It depends, you know, which folklore you're coming at it from.
You could just be a quick snack.
Yeah, pretty much an easy snack, right? Because if you gain that trust, then, you know, you're as good as gone.
Now, when you were doing your research and you had all these stories, you said there's a lot of stories in there. Can you share some of those stories with us?
Okay. So I like this story. This one happened in North Carolina. It's a quick one, but I think it's important because the way that it played out, you kind of have to look at it through the whole picture.
Okay.
So a woman named Summer left to spend an evening with her friends. Summer and her husband had lived in a forested area, very much like my hometown, covered in forest. They had, I think, forest in their backyard. So she was spending a night with her friends. It was about 20 minutes away, and she left her husband, Jason, to stay home with their 6-year-old son. Now, the son, I think, was feeling ill that night, so he was sick, so they put him to bed, or Jason put him to bed at 9 o'clock, made sure he was okay, and it wasn't long before he heard his son crying in the bedroom. So he goes in and found that his son he had vomited in the bed, and he was really sick. So Jason cleaned him up, moved him to his bed, and collected all the soiled sheets and the bedding, and went out to the backyard and hosed them off. So here's where it gets interesting. So Jason's alone.
I just want to say that I do enjoy that the kid puked and he took him outside and hosed him off.
Not the kid, the bedding.
Oh, I was thinking the
But actually,
kid.
that's not a bad idea either. No, he put his son in his bed, cleaned him up, put him in his bed, and then took his son's soiled bedding, took it to the backyard, and then hosed off the bedding. So as he's doing that, he's completely alone, and all of a sudden he hears this voice from behind him in the direction of the forest. And all it says is, "Hey, Dad."
Oh.
This is his son's voice. So Jason stops what he's doing, and he looks up, expecting, of course, to see his son, like needing him. His son's not there. The voice is coming from the woods. So Jason gets up, runs into the house to make sure his son is still there. And his son is there, and he's fast asleep. This was not Jason's son that called him. So Jason waited for his wife to get home. They discussed it. He's a very matter-of-fact person. He would not make it up. So the reason why I like this story, this is the lure, okay? This is the first step.
Yeah.
It did not get to the lost, He didn't, go outside and with a flashlight or anything and follow this. But here's why it's important. This being, this disembodied voice, knew the situation perfectly. So when I talked this over with Summer, we both agreed how creepy this would have been because it understood the relationship between all three of them. It was smart enough to identify the father, the son, and the perfect situation of when to launch into the lure. It waited till A, Summer was out, B, the boy was sick, and C, Jason was alone, and also he would have been on extra alert because his son was sick. You know what I mean? So it was kind of orchestrating that, It was kind of, it knew exactly, it was aware of the situation. It was aware that this was the perfect time for an ambush. And if Jason was, didn't have his wits about him, and he went in the other direction, then it could have had a different story. So I don't know. I kind of like that one
Because he was watching.
Different.
Like it wasn't just not just opportune time, but it was watching and waiting.
It was watching, and it was also studying them to get his son's voice perfectly right.
So studying them. How long do you think it watched?
Oh.
Because I know you got into like the demonic and dark side of it too with your book, but I remember we had Bishop James Long on the show. It was about a month ago now, and he was talking about a demonic that is completely outside of time. They have all the time to wait. It's nothing to them, right?
Yeah. Actually, I never thought about that. If time is, relevant to them, then I'm sure it would be very minimal amount of time to mimic a little boy's voice. But
who
the
knows
creepy
how
thing,
long whatever that was watching.
Yeah, it could be days. I don't know. But the creepy thing that I felt is that imagine this thing in the woods rehearsing this little boy's voice over and over until it felt confident that it could get it right. You know what I mean? And then it's like, okay, tonight's the night. I'm going to do this. I'm going to launch into the ambush. And, that's the creepy thing. It's like these things have a self-awareness. They're intelligent. And, they, that was basically the perfect opportunity
storm,
for a
right?
trap. So.
Whew. Yeah, you got any more like that? Them's some good stories, Tim.
I got a ton of those. The book's full of great stories. I had, a lot of great people reached out to me. And it's not easy to talk about for people. So I'm very grateful that they trust me with their stories. I'll see if I can find another quick one.
Well, I mean, while you're looking at that, it's when people have these stories, I mean, obviously they don't just want to tell everybody, right? I mean, it's you're opening yourself up. You're vulnerable. You know, it was you at a weakness, and people don't like to admit when they were at a weakness. So it's something magical about that.
Yeah, I know I didn't come right out and tell everyone my story right away, especially because you don't really know exactly what you're telling, right? You don't know, like, it's not like, oh, I saw a light in the sky. You know what I mean? This is, like, how do you categorize this? It's tricky. You know, you don't really know what you're telling.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna lie. When I first read the title of your book, I was like, okay, it's gonna be a book on like EVP work and stuff like that for investigators. And this is a whole new ball game. Spine
It's a whole
tingling.
new ball game. So the difference, so if anyone doesn't know, so the difference between EVPs and this, Disembodied Voices, is an EVP you usually hear through an electronic device, obviously, phone, recorder, computer, whatever, and you never hear it with the naked ear, right? It's always a playback, after you're there. It's always after the fact. But I always say the difference between that and a disembodied voice is you hear it with your ears, and you hear it in real time. So it's reaching out to you at that moment. It's interacting with you. It's hoping to have a reaction with you. So that's the difference. It's not ghosts or the same thing as EVP, basically, I'm trying to say.
Now, I know back when I was in my early 20s when I started a paranormal investigation team. We did this old house. It's a museum now, but it was a very historic Victorian house, and we just pretty much classified everything. If we got it in the recorder, it was an EVP, right? Because we didn't know any better. This was several years ago, several years ago, when we did the investigation of this house. We had an audible voice, right? And we had recorders set up all over. I mean, there were each side of the house on every single floor. If there was going to be a noise, we were going to catch it, and we were going to figure out timestamps. Like, we were on it for that. But this voice was of a kid, and listening to you talk and all that, it clicks, and it was, "Come find me," up on like a third floor.
That's creepy.
Right? So that was a disembodied voice. Now
that was a disembodied voice.
Now, because we all audibly heard it, and we all were checking. Hey, did you hear that? You hear that? You hear that? What do we do? Let's go. Right? We didn't get eaten by a whatever, but we caught that on recording and everything. Yeah.
Voice.
I'll see if I can find that. I'll send it to you. I got it somewhere.
Yeah, I would love to hear that. That's definitely sounds like a disembodied voice, if you hear it with your ears. And, and if you are, I do spend some time on voices that come from strange places, abnormally bodied voices, I guess you could say. And, some of those are old radios, some of those are TV sets, creepy old houses, they originate from them. You don't see what it is. It's not the body, but it's coming from like an area or a space. Sometimes people report voices coming from like animals, really, really weird stuff. There's a chapter in there.
Son of Sam, right?
Yeah, that's a perfect example. Yeah, I talk about that as well. Really weird experiences. And so it's got everything. Like, really, it's something for everyone in there. Really spooky stuff.
You got one more story for us?
So I'll tell you an older story. This one comes from English writer Catherine Crowe, and it's a more historical one. And honestly, I really like the older ones. They've been like vetted throughout history to be like accurate. I think they're, you can't always believe everything on the internet, but
right.
I like these classic ones.
Now, when you say older, how old would you say it is?
Oh, geez, I think it's 1800s.
Okay, so not like it was back in the 90s.
Yeah, no, not the 90s. No, I think it's 1800s. So this German family was sleeping in a castle. They had 3 young sons, and the sons were all sleeping in a room in the far wing of the castle, and their parents were on the other side of the castle. So during the night, the eldest boy, he awoke because he heard the voice of his father. It woke him up, and it was calling him by name. So he got up, and he went to his parents' room, found his father, but he was sleeping. So the boy shook him awake and said, you were calling me? Here I am. And the father said, no, I didn't call you. And so the boy was like, okay, that was weird. Goes back to bed. He falls asleep. And then again, a second time, he's awakened by the voice that sounds like his father. He goes back and wakes up his father. Well, again, you called me. And the father says, no, I didn't call you. So this happens a third time. He hears his father's voice, and he wakes up. This time, he wakes up his brothers and asks them if they heard it. But it was only this one boy. So they all march to the father's room, and they're like, okay, we heard it again, or I heard it again. What's going on? And as the father's about to, scold them, they hear a loud crash in the other side of the castle.
Ooh.
So it turns out, while they were over there, the wing that they were sleeping in had collapsed to the ground. So this voice had kind of sort of protected them, essentially, warned them to get up and go over there away from this, because it knew that something was going to happen, and that wing of the castle collapsed, and they would have been killed. So
it's almost like the opposite of the other voices and other stories.
Oh, yeah, there's both sides. There really is. This story is so similar to a lot of the historical ones, where it's they get up and they say, oh, I heard you calling me, and they say, no, go back to bed. But there's a mischievous side to them. There's another story like this where this man hears this voice in his sleep. It wakes him up again, but it's in a different language that he can't understand. So he writes it down, but he can't read it. He writes what he guesses the letters are in the language, because he knows the language, but he can't speak it. Okay. It's basically like if you wrote French, but you can't really understand. So this voice had said something to him, but he couldn't understand it. So he had brought this note down, or he brought this note to someone who could speak this language, and he said, I heard this voice in the night. I don't know what it said. I wrote it down. I don't know if I spelled it all right. What the heck does this message say? And it says, basically, get out. Don't you know that you're going to die soon? And the next day, his house fell to the ground, and he would have been killed. So you have both sides to the
back
story.
of my neck my hairs are standing straight up.
So you see the difference there. It's okay, this voice is a protective voice, but it's a mischievous voice because it told him in a language that it knew he could not understand. So it was kind of like a game, right? It was very kind of like a twisted game. It's is he going to solve this riddle in time? Because I'm speaking to him in a different language.
That's very Fey. Very Fey.
Yeah, very Fey. I definitely touch on the Fey in there for sure. There's some crazy parallels with the wilderness and tree spirits and everything. There's definitely different kinds of voices. There's, the guardian angel type. There's the, prophecy voices. There's the Fae. There's the tricksters. A lot of people like the trickster voices. You hear a lot of that nowadays. The very nefarious ones. There's everything. It's a wide range. So we see the subtle difference in those stories. Mm-hmm. It's you saved my life, but then, you're toying with my life. It's
I'll help
creepy.
you, but I don't want to.
Yeah.
Now with your book, and for those of you that didn't catch it before, it's Disembodied Voices, True Accounts of Hidden Beings. If folks out there want your book, how do they find it?
So the book is available pretty much anywhere you get books. I know a lot of people that shop online. You can get at Barnes & Noble, get at Amazon. If you have a local bookstore that is your favorite, go in there, ask them. I bet you 100% they'll order it for you if they don't have it on the shelves already. A lot of them probably do. You can pretty much get it anywhere, like I said.
And if they want to get up with you, are you on social media? Are you out there kind of available if they have stories, for maybe book number 2?
Yeah, absolutely. You guys can get in touch with me. I'm happy to take questions and stories. There's a lot in that book to unpack, so I welcome any questions and any feedback. I'm on Instagram. It's just my name, Tim Marczenko, author. I'm on Facebook as well. I'm really easy to find. And also, if you just type in Disembodied Voices, my name will come up. And yeah, like I said, I welcome all the feedback. Everyone's been really nice so far. I've got great reviews. The readers are really, really nice, really intelligent conversation I've had with a bunch of them already. So yeah, I'm open to that for sure.
Well, this definitely sounds like an amazing book. Not only is it just for the story's sake alone going to be a great read, but as far as like the research you put into it and tying it into like different cultures, beliefs, and all that, like it's pretty neat. Hats off to you on that. That's a lot of work to put in.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, I definitely put everything I had into this book. I worked so hard, and you know what? I was honest. It's an honest book. I tried my best. Maybe some parts aren't perfect, but honestly, there's something in there for everyone. It'll give you the creeps. I guarantee it. And it happened to me. I lived it, and it was creepy. So I really encourage anyone who's interested to pick it up. And yeah, feel free to get in touch on Instagram or whatever. I'm happy to meet new interesting people to talk about weird stuff. So.
Very cool. Tim Marczenko, thank you so much for joining us today. I know we talked before. You do have a time crunch, so I want to be respectful for that. I appreciate you. I appreciate you coming on. And before we go, are there any books for the future? I know I said maybe for book number 2, but you got anything in the works?
Yeah, I got something in the works right now. It's not paranormal related. Some people might want to argue that with me, but it's about mysterious disappearances in the wilderness.
See, and I brought that up. I knew you were onto something. I could discern it. I felt it in my bones.
Yeah. Because honestly, it's the next progression to this book. The later chapters of that book, the Disembodied Voices, like I said, it talks about the lure, the trap, and the lost. And the lost is the next progression. So book 2 is going to be all about the poor people that we have gone missing. And no one, they don't have a voice. And I want to do a book for long-term missing people, specifically in my country, Canada.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I do like long-term, like cold case missing persons. I investigate those. So I have cases going back, to the 40s or whatever, and really interesting stuff. I try to give, the full story of these people, instead of just like the one line, sentence. I don't like that. I like to give them like a full story. So the next one's about mysterious disappearances in the woods and what went wrong, search and rescue reports, and what we can do better. It's really, really, really interesting.
And I think that is a really cool topic because not only are you touching into the mysterious, it could be like some true crime and things like that. That's really cool. And I've actually had some folks reach out and say, hey, some true crime would be fun to throw into the paranormal show as well. If you're up for it, maybe we can have you back on and we can discuss some of these stories.
Oh yeah, I would absolutely love that.
I think that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and it's a fine line, Some people say it's all paranormal. Some people say, it's like some people it's homicides. But it's a fine line, and when you don't know what happened to these people, and you don't know, you just have to stick to the facts and what you do know, and say, let the story, tell itself, kind of thing. And I'd be happy to come back and share that with you for sure.
I appreciate it. Well, and my belief on that too. I mean, paranormal is anything not normal. And I really don't want to think that true crime murder and, you know, missing folks is normal. So we're going to keep that in the para realm.
I think I'll agree with you on that one.
There we go. Tim, thank you so much again, and we will talk to you soon.
Yeah, it was a real pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And with that, the fire is out. Thank you guys so much for joining me for another show. Very blessed by you guys. Very blessed that you take a little bit of time out of your week just to listen to what I got to say and who I have to bring on. So I really do appreciate you guys. If you do enjoy listening to the show, make sure you join us on your social networks. So Fireside Paranormal Hub on Facebook. That is a great group of folks out there. A lot of cool networking, a lot of cool, you know, memes and stories, and we just have a great time. On Twitter at Fireside Parapod, Parapod. Instagram, TikTok, all that fun stuff. Make sure you check out our website, firesideparanormal.com. From there, you can see the show episodes as soon as I get them posted. So usually they're up there before they are on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You also have access to the merch section. We got a lot of really fun designs on there, working on a couple of new ones. So maybe you'll see some new things coming out on that merch page here soon. And don't forget to rate us. If you do listen on like Apple or Spotify, make sure you give us a rating and a review. That really does help us out. Not only does it feed my ego, but it also helps the show as far as getting sent out to more folks to listen to, getting recommendations through their system. So any rating or review is very appreciated. Thank you. And until next week, everybody, don't be afraid, only believe.